I could give the speech without wearing one of the suits that I bought. This was 1994, if I remember correctly. And it's the darkest suit that I still own, so the appropriate one. So Mom asked Chris and I to do the, Mom asked Chris and me, excuse me, to do the eulogies. You'll always correct me on that. And it was in the middle of a very big thing that I did. I had to go to China to give a speech, and I said, I'm not thinking about this. We're going to split it up, you know, somehow, and you do this part, and I'll do that part, and let me know what's happening when I come back. The speech that you just heard, almost unchanged from the first draft, I read for the first time on my flight back from China. Oh. And I cried. I just cried. It's beautiful. It's different from what I was expecting. It's different from what we thought we were going to do. And I started thinking, well, you know, what can I add to this? I mean, this is just a great story. He's done a great job. Chris has been very original with this. And I like that he started with the 3 words. And I'm less of a word guy, I think, than I am a picture guy. There have been hundreds of pictures of Dad over the years. I mean, and many, many very, very good ones. But there are 2 pictures that, to me, are the center of Dad and speak more of him than any other. Can I volunteer? Thank you. The first one is this. Taken in the summer of 1977 at the top of the Heineken Brewery in downtown Amsterdam with Dad's oldest child, my sister Kelly. He's 54 years young. He stands straight, tall, overlooking a foreign city, far from home. And he overlooks it with just a shadow of a smile, full of confidence and good cheer. The trials of youth, young adulthood, and even early middle age, they're over. He's at peace with his place in the world and feels very much in control of it. Let me talk to you about traveling with Dad. There are few people in the world I know who are better traveled than my parents. The year before this photo was taken, Dad took Mom, Chris, and me to Alaska on one of the first cruises that went through the Panhandle and through Glacier Bay. A few years later, the 4 of us went on a family visit to Switzerland. We crossed the country several times on trains, taking in Bern, Geneva, Lucerne, Zurich. 2 years later, the 4 of us again made a pilgrimage, this time a trans-country train across Canada. And life intervenes during these things. In the midst of that particular journey, we got an early morning phone call. David, the second grandchild, had been born. These trips were wonderful. They were taken when I was a preteen and a teenager. And it was my absolute great pleasure to be able to provide to Dad several of the destinations that he took as an adult. He first came to visit me when I was in Sweden in 1987, where we journeyed throughout Scandinavia. He then came with Mom and Chris to visit me in Prague in the summer of 1992. And this was his most personal trip, I feel, in many ways. We were able to revisit the Battle of Cheb that Chris talked about. We found the very building that he and his buddy Biovat did the day before his buddy was killed. Killed uselessly, as Dad would frequently say, only days before V-Day. He came to visit me in Moscow in the days of recently out of communism, when I was working there. I made absolutely sure that his hotel was the best one I could find. Across the Moscow River from the Kremlin, you could go to the top, to the library, and look down into the gardens of the Kremlin. See Red Square. It was right out of one of his John le Carre novels. A few days after his death, I ran into a matchbook box from that same hotel, 17 years after the trip, kept with 3 matches left. In his elder years, the only destination that we had to give him was my home. He came to visit California on Christmases in the early part of the 2000s to personally see my young family start their rocky road of growth. He stopped coming in 2005 when his age just wouldn't let him travel anymore. And we reversed the transit with my family going to see him annually. This photo is how I remember Dad. And I am so horribly sorry that so many of you who are here today Didn't know him at this point. Okay. When I think of Calvin Steussy, this is the image in my mind. This is the image I want to keep. This is how we all deserve to be remembered. Vibrant, strong, confident. The second image is new to me. I saw it for the first time 9 months ago.
Ed, can you rotate it this way, sir?
Here.
Oh, okay. Yep, I know that.
We
Okay.
all recognize it now.
To those of you who don't know it, this is from the wedding. Jean and Cal are leaving the festivities to go off on a brief honeymoon. And I show this photo to Cal or to Jean, the story both of them told me, separate cases. Let me tell you about the car. I'm going to completely ignore the car and talk about the picture. It's August 27th, 1949, Richmond, Virginia. Town still haunted by the ghosts of the war between the states. It's blazingly hot, humid. I'm a full minus 14 years old, so I remember it well. In attendance are Dad's family and friends, many of them long gone now. His mother is there, Helen Verna Freitag Steussy, who grew up in this house, and is the reason that we're here today. Edwin Eugene Steussy, her husband, Dad's dad, is there as well. Henry Steussy, his grandfather, and Henry's second wife, Ellen Kundrat Steussy. Henry was only the second generation, born in 1874, here in New Glarus, to have the name of Steussy with our own peculiar spelling at that wedding. And there was a spry, elegant, beautiful 12-year-old girl. Mary Ellen Steussy, who's here today. Before I go on about the picture, let me tell you a quick story. First time that my mother was introduced to her future family went like this. Edwin, Helen, Calvin, and Mary had just moved into their house in Tacoma Road. Calvin shows up from school with this beautiful, intelligent woman, completely unannounced. No warning. Goes up to Edwin and Helen, who are sitting there. They're doing the dishes. And he introduced them to Jean. Says, I brought her home for dinner. He sure they won't mind. Completely brazen. They find she's a bridge player, and they fall in love with her. Now look at the photo. Who wouldn't? Let me tell you about the greatness of this photo. It's not just that my parents are here, looking impossibly young. It's the only photo that I have from that day where they're alone. They're only the two of them. Dad's at the steering wheel, in control, driving, gazing ahead for any possible obstacles. He's on a journey. Jean's with him, arm around her husband, beautiful, looking at the flowers. She's on the same journey, but she's not looking at any obstacles. She doesn't have to. She's completely confident in Calvin. He can take her where he wants. The journey lasted over 60 years. Calvin, my father, is gone. His legacy will live on because I'm part of him. His values are my values. Intellect, honesty, perseverance. I will dutifully pass those on. Daniel Solon Steussy, Camilla Nora Steussy, Aaron Dietrich Steussy, and Veronica Marie Steussy.